Be in Genesis chapter 6, starting in verse 15 today. We'll go through as much as we can. I think I got plenty more than what we probably will get through today. Last week we only made it through 14 verses, but they were pretty tough of it. Yeah. And so I do want to not condemn. That's a way wrong way. Man, I don't even know what word I'm looking for. I guess brag about the group we got in here, because even people that can't make it, when they can't make it, I hear feedback from several people that they watch the videos then, and then actually share it with other people and stuff like that. So it's been work. And Todd, he can't make it now with his truck driving, and he tells me on Sundays, that he watches it. So I mean, I think we're all doing a pretty good job at it. And usually before when we were in here, it never really mattered, but now that we're actually walking through something, it helps keep up with it. But yeah, last week we got into the sons of God and Nephilim and all that, and it just took a while to go through. I think today we'll actually get through a few more verses. Not as much, I guess, discussion, deep stuff, I guess, so to say. What we'll be going over today. So verse 14, when we finish, it basically just started the construction of the ark, what God is telling Noah what to do. And if you remember way back in verse 8, when God said, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord," and I said, put your name in for Noah and see if, is God going to say that about you? Same way when we go through chapter 7, when we see Noah again, put your name in there and see if you're doing it. It makes it hit home even a little more, I think. So so Genesis 6 verse 15, we'll start there. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it and finish it. Or make a roof for it and finish the ark to within 18 inches of the top. Put a door on the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. So the 450 by 75 by 45, just to give you a little bit of comparison. I mean, it's obviously a huge boat, and for I think a lot of you guys have seen it, the one over there. But the Titanic was 85 by 92 by 64, so it's just slightly smaller than like what the Titanic was, but still plenty of room, especially if he's going to be putting a lower deck, a middle deck, and an upper deck in it. Lots of room in there. And then in verse 16 there, it says the roof. Think of that as like a window. Basically, think of it as like a skylight. What we think about today, because obviously inside this, if it's completely sealed off, going to be dark. Kind of like a skylight, and then that way they can also see a little bit of what's going on. So in verse 16, think of that. And then it's also great, we've made several comparisons about how the ark is like a prelude to what Jesus is. The ark saved Noah and his family, only 8 people, and Jesus right now is our only way to salvation. And another resemblance of that is that there's just one door for Noah to be saved. He's going in this one door into the ark, and just like Jesus, he is the only way to the Father. What does he say? I don't know what verse it is, but no one comes through the Father except through me.
14
yeah, see, there you go. So there, it's just super fascinating how so much of this ark can resemble today's time. And that's why I think when you get into the New Testament, get into Matthew and stuff, and it's brought up later, how that all goes back. There's a lot of verses that say back in, like it was in the days of Noah, and it's just super great how it all works out. All right, so verse 17, I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. Let's see. The only thing because it says everything under the heaven, every creature that has breath of life. So, but the one thing I do want to point out is that aquatic life, okay? obviously there's no reason to put that into the boat. They can kind of survive in the water. You know what I mean? So don't let people fool you. Yes, fish, aquatic stuff. We'll also see it here in verse 20. That it can survive in the water. But right there at the end of 17, it says everything on earth will perish. Okay, so it sounds super awful. But what does God put? The next word he puts in Scripture, tells Moses to write down, is but. So this is another, like, it's already been used several times here in Genesis, all the bad stuff, and then God puts in a but, showing his grace, going to show his mercy. Everything's going to be bad, but there's a but in there for Noah. So, verse 18, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. This is the first covenant that's made here in Genesis to Noah, and then his sons and his sons' wives. And think about it, back in those days, I'm pretty sure most of the husbands just chose their wives. You know, when we talk about the sons of God choosing their wives, it probably was them ladies at that time were probably thinking, "Whoo, thank goodness them Japheth or whatever, they're the sons of Noah." You know, they're probably thinking like, "Man, I'm glad they picked me for this." You know, because the rest of civilization gonna be wiped out.
Well, probably the first thing about it was nobody believed it would rain.
Yeah, I mean, because
there wasn't no rain.
No.
Didn't know what it was. Yeah.
How could they even believe that there was anything going to fall?
Right.
From the sky?
Yeah, and you remember like the earth. A lot of the commentaries all pretty much agree. Like, you know, there's been water around. And it's basically just like a mist, like a fog that's been watering everything. You know, up until this day.
Talk about coming up out of the ground.
Yeah. All right, so verse 19, you are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. So a couple of little things on that. The kinds, we talked about that. I'm not going to go over it again. I think I still got a thing. Yep, right there. But I like the end of that, the verse 20 right there. Every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you. So God is going to send, like, Noah ain't going to have to go out there with his rope and be like Tyler's boy up here and just be roping everything. You know, they're going to come to him. He's just got to get them. Noah's got to get them loaded onto the ark, get the ark built right, and get them loaded. Because you would think, man, that'd spend half his time. It took him 120 years to build this ark. Probably took him another 100 to round up all these animals. But God's going to help him out in that situation. Okay, so verse 21.
You think God sent just the 2 that Noah needed? Or do you think he sent all of the animals and let him pick and choose the 2 strongest per kind?
I don't know. So, and that's one thing I want to read here. So the kinds, you know, people will still say, oh, that, you know, there's still no way that they can all fit in the ark. So I want to read here what MacArthur says. But think about it. So if there's kinds, you know, you're not taking every canine. You're just taking a set of canines. But then also you take something like an elephant, or, you know, the dinosaurs that are walking around. They're probably taking like an immature, a juvenile, you know, a young one, male and female. So I mean, that's going to free up a lot of room. And then MacArthur here, he writes a few little things that I kind of need. So for his commentary on verse 19 and 20, it says, there are fewer than 18,000 species living on Earth today. This number may have been doubled to allow for now extinct creatures, you know, creatures that we might not even have known. So even so, double it, 36,000 species. With 2 of each, a total of 72,000 creatures are going to have to get on the ark. Is reasonable as indicated in the note on verse 15 and 16, blah, blah, blah. The cubic space of the ark holds 125,000 sheep, okay? And he uses sheep for a reason. And since the average size of land animals is less than a sheep, perhaps less than 60% of the space was used. The very large animals were surely represented by young ones, you know, a juvenile, even babies to what extent. there was ample room also for the 1 million species of insects as well as food for a year for everyone. So he uses sheep because, and I never would have thought of that, but a sheep, how do you put it? Could hold 125,000 sheep, and since the average size of land animals is less than a sheep, that many animals wouldn't even take up but 60% of the room on the dimensions. So, and then of course all your insects and stuff like that's not too big of a
I
deal.
got to thinking about that too. How did he get them to shut up at nighttime?
Ah.
Sleep.
Nightlight. That's what that skylight was for. They just looked up, heard the pounding of the rain on the ark, and they were just zonked out. Oh shoot. Yeah, then you get the nocturnal animals. So like take like a possum or something, it just finally wakes up and then moves around. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see. All right, so I wanted to hit that. I almost forgot.
You had to
that.
feed them all.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
got turkey or sheep bucket, don't you reckon?
It's interesting to think of the concept that everything we've read up to this point that God created, gone.
It's gonna be
Except
gone.
for what's gonna fit on this ark now.
Mhm.
So basically starting all over again.
Starting fresh.
Yeah.
With a remnant, 8 people is all, and we got to repopulate the whole earth from the 8 people.
Plants and trees too be going.
Yep. Yep.
Plus the fact that, a lot of times, we think about things we do for the Lord, at times we think, what are people gonna think of what I'm doing? Think I'm some kind of fanatic or whatever. I mean, look what Noah had to go through during the time he built this thing. And like what we mentioned, there's no water around, it's out in the middle of the desert practically, and no rain or nothing, so everybody, talk about being talked about, persecuted,
Mm-hmm.
and pointed at, laughed at, and everything else.
And
And,
like what we read in 2 Peter it's either 1 Peter or 2 Peter, while he's building this ark, it also said that he was a preacher of righteousness. So he is going out and telling people and warning people. Nobody's wanting to listen to him because, like you said, there was no rain yet. So they thought this guy was just completely nuts,
but on the other hand, I don't know if I'd want it to tell everybody.
Right.
Because it's only your family, then you might end up with 1 million people
Yeah.
wanting to get on the ark
Yeah.
and sink it.
That'd be the 2 of every kind, is all the crazies out in the world.
I think it did after the fact that it did start raining, didn't it?
What's
They were
that?
already sealed in the ark, didn't
Yeah,
people
yeah.
come and try
Yeah,
to get in?
nobody could even once it, because we'll read here that God shut the door and that's it. Yeah. All right, so verse 21, you are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. And then right here, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Doesn't say Noah believed in God but didn't do anything he said. Doesn't say Noah halfway did stuff, kind of, sort of, for God. It says Noah did everything just as God has commanded him.
Couldn't sneak a Snickers on board.
Right.
Or anything like that, 'cause
And earlier it says Noah was a righteous man of his generation, but he still wasn't perfect. So don't get me wrong; like, he wasn't obviously Jesus himself. He wasn't perfect, but when it come to this, he was doing everything God has commanded. A lot of people, pretty much everybody, we want to pick and choose what to believe, what to do, what we want. We want to pick and choose of what to do. Yeah, of what God is commanding us to do. Parts of the Bible. There's people that like, okay, I agree with that, but I don't agree with it. No, it's not. You can't pick and choose of this, and it's kind of like an all or nothing kind of thing. But Noah believed what God was saying, that it was going to rain, even though he's never seen rain. God believed it, and he obeyed it. We talked about that a lot when we were going through them transformation ones. Our faith, it should be a faith of action. When we read about the people with the dead faith, they might have the knowledge of everything in Scripture, but if they're not acting on it, it's dead. What does it say? Faith without works is dead. So just like Noah, if he would have believed God, God, I believe you're going to send rain. I believe you're going to do this. I believe you're going to destroy that. But if he didn't act on it, do what God said, it would have been for nothing. So he acted on it. And
I was gonna say, the other thing to think about is, you know, Noah had to build the ark, although God probably had it all within his power to do what he was gonna do and still save Noah and everybody without an ark. If
oh
he-
yeah,
if he
I
wanted
mean,
to.
yeah, if God
So,
wanted to, he could have definitely saved
Yeah.
Noah without it. But Noah obeyed God enough to listen to what he
Yeah.
said and actually did what God, commanded him. In which not only did it save Noah's life, but then saved his family's life.
Right.
So the same way for us guys in here, we talked a lot about, we're the headship of our family. We are to be leading our family towards God and basically saving their life, just like Noah saved his family's life. And there's, we read about all the evil that goes on at that time. And here's what Tony Evan writes is, obedience in the midst of evil should be the supreme goal and desire of God's people. So, we just had the election and we all know what's going on in this country. But our obedience to God should be our goal. If we are obedient to God, things will fall into place afterwards. But if we're not doing what God tells us to do, it's not doing anybody any good. Just like Noah, he stuck out amongst all the evil in his generation. Just we should be sticking out in our generation. All right, so chapter 7, and just remember that verse 22, because basically that verse is going to come around several different times. So chapter 7, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Well, okay, so there it is. We haven't read it yet. I was ahead of myself. I knew I read it sometime. But so he was righteous in this generation. So don't think like, okay, he was perfect, because he was not perfect. But amongst all the evil, he stuck out. God found favor in him. And God invited Noah into the ark. Noah wasn't, it doesn't say, but it wasn't pleading, begging, or anything. God completely invited him into the ark. So now we're gonna go into Matthew 24, verse 36. And I get a cheat. I got little tabbies that already knew where to go. You already knew where we were going?
Matthew 24.
Yeah. Matthew 24, 36 to 39. So, yeah, Matthew 24, 36 to 39. Okay, I'll read 36. No one knows about that day, and this is, okay, so this is talking about the end of time, second coming, all that. Give you kind of a little backstory. So verse 36, no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Okay? One thing I want to point out, and this is going to be kind of a little side note, but right there it says, no one knows, not even the angels, the Son, but only the Father. Now, I have read commentary.
What chapter, yeah?
24, verse 36. Sorry, Pat. But here's something to think about, and you guys could research it on your own. I'd like to research it a little more, but I've read commentaries that talks about when Jesus was here, when he was saying these, because these are Jesus's words, he did not know the time, but once he died, resurrected, and ascended back into heaven, now that he's with God and he's 100% all God now, I guess, so to say, that he does know. And when we read in Revelation, remember he's sitting on that one cloud, just kind of sitting there waiting, for his time. So some commentaries have believed that when he was here, 100% man and 100% God, that he didn't know, because he said he didn't know what day he's coming back. But now, after his time here on earth is done, God has gave him his angelic, godful powers that he does know now. So I don't know. It's just something. If you want, I thought that was fascinating. I don't remember where I read that. Rick has talked about it before. I think actually when I was going through his Revelation one, that Jesus knows when he's coming back now, but he didn't at this time. So it's just something if you kind of want to get into it.
You get into false prophet now.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is full of that.
Oh, yeah.
This day God told me that it's gonna.
Oh,
No,
it's
no,
awful.
no.
That's I know it's so awful, and that's like one of the first announcements. So when I start the Revelation study next week, one of the first announcements I'm going to make, like, hey, we're not in here. We're not going to talk about every YouTuber you've watched under the sun, because like, if you want to do that, you can do that on your own accord. But like, you gotta, when we read in here and talk about all the false prophets, you might want to second guess yourself about just watching some random YouTube guy that says, "Oh, good Lord, just show me a sign," and I'm like,
Read the book.
yeah, right.
That's the more you're gonna know any.
Oh, shoot. All right, so verse 37. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying, and giving into marriage up to the day of Noah entered the ark. And when we read in Genesis, we're at that day right now, because it just said God invited him into the ark. So we are there. So what Matthew is talking about is just what we are reading in Genesis. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man.
So does that kind of cement the fact, maybe Noah wasn't spreading the word about what's going on?
Well, I'll show you that here in a second. But one thing I want to point out here in verse 38, when it says, Matthew here is talking about not all the sin in the days of Noah, but how people were just going on about their business. Because he doesn't say the evils of the days of Noah or anything like that. He's just pointing out they were eating, drinking, marrying, basically just going on with their life. And then boom, here comes the flood. So
If
The
they were
king-
going on with their life without God, this wouldn't have been happening in the first place.
that's right. Absolutely right. So to Kent's point, there's 2 Peter 2:5. I believe is the one. Yeah. All right. So 2 Peter 2:5. It is like literally like one page, and the 2 Peter's like 2 pages, so it's pretty easy to skip. That's why I put me my little cheat sheet tabs in there, so I didn't look like an idiot when I'm sitting up here.
Right. Revelation will come back this year.
All right, so 2 Peter 2:5 says, well, starting 4. For if God did not spare, well, okay, so we read this when we talked about the angels. Spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into a gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment. If he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others. So it says right there, he is a preacher of righteousness. So that means he was a preacher.
So he's
preaching at that
Might
time.
not have preached about the ark, but he was preaching.
Righteousness,
Right.
which is God. You know, talking to people about God, and they just didn't want to hear it. They wanted to go on about eating and drinking and marrying, and then of course we read about all the sins. The bad Lamech that did the murders and bragged about it to his wives? See, the bad Lamech or the bad Enoch? It's all blurring together again on me. So these people were definitely warned, and just did not want to listen.
It makes you wonder, I mean, if you did actually get somebody to respond, would you take them on the ark with him?
Well, I mean, I think God knew nobody was going to respond. Is what I figured. But Noah felt. I'm going to say felt the obligation. I mean, he had 120 years to do it, and so these people had 100. Think about that. These people had 120 years to turn to God, and they didn't. To get they didn't come right with the Lord. And I mean, it's exactly, and just like Matthew says, it'll be like the days of Noah. Yes, people are eating, drinking, and going on with their business. But the sin and people turning away from God or not turning to God is happening today, every day.
People are getting warned every day not to.
Yeah,
And
and
they're still doing it.
and we read Revelation. I mean, it says in there Jesus is coming back, and this time it's going to be the end of it. There's going to be no more second chances for anybody. And so this is what I like to point out in Matthew there when it says it'll be like in the days of Noah. Well, guess what? Noah's building an ark, and guess what? We have an ark pretty much that's a scale replica, ain't it? So sitting in the United States, we have the ark already sitting there. To me, it's a great sign that, days of Noah's building an ark, and wow, we decided to build an ark here in the middle.
Destroy the world with water.
No, we're not gonna. No, but I think it's just a good semblance that, I mean, still might be another 1,000 years before Jesus comes back, but that was one step along the way that God, I think, will look down and point out and be like, you idiots. Like, I had people build the ark to kind of maybe jog your memory a little bit about a flood before. He's like, and y'all just went on about it and toured it and went on,
Not use water again.
Nope, no water. Which we'll
What the
get.
rainbow's for.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I don't even think I've hit that part yet. Nope. All right, so verse 2 and 3. Take with you 7. Okay, so this changes a little bit here for some of these clean animals. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Okay, doesn't say anything about, like I said, the fish. We don't have to worry about the fish. But what's this clean animals? You can go back through scripture and you can Google up what God considered clean animals back in those days. That's all changed, by the way. Don't let anybody fool you, like we can't eat pig and stuff. If you read in the Old Testament, yes, they weren't supposed to eat pig, something with their hooves and all that, but that's all changed with Peter. I think it was Peter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Peter and Jesus told Peter, do not make anything unclean that I have deemed clean now. So that's what in time, talking about false prophets, I got turned off on a pastor one time when he talked the whole sermon about not eating pork. And I'm like, pretty sure that's changed. Read it myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, that changed. And I'm like, here you are preaching it to, at that place there's a lot of people, and I'm like, So, where'd I go? Oh, the clean animal. So these clean animals, why is God telling them to bring a few more of those? One, it's going to be for sacrifices, and we'll see, like when as soon as Noah gets off the ark later, we'll read that, I mean, he sacrificed animals to God. So that's what the clean animals are for. Okay, so verse 4 and 5. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. In verse 5, once again, and Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. That's twice, them exact words. So it says, and Daniel did all the Lord God commanded him. I mean, that puts it tough when you put your own name in there. And I do, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, if the clean animals was for sacrifice and whatnot, what was the unclean animals for?
To reproduce.
Okay.
Yeah. Fill the earth back up. So God, basically, so he don't have to really make anymore. He can just keep the lineage going, after the flood.
I wonder why he called them mates on some and
Yeah.
females on others.
Yeah, because this is the only time it says mates, right? Because everything else we read, it was male and female, and then just right here, he turned them into mates. Yeah, I don't know.
Male and it's mates.
Maybe he got tired of writing female or something. I don't
I mean,
know.
there's some species out there that, like penguins, they mate for life. So, I mean, they mate for life. Whereas you might have some animals, some male tiger or something might be making babies with every lioness that comes along.
Yeah.
There had to be a reason, but.
Yeah.
That actually a pretty good reason. Better than what I had. I didn't have nothing on it. Oh, shoot. Okay, so verse 5, and Noah did all the Lord had commanded him. John 14:15 says, and this is Jesus talking, if you love me, you will obey my commands. So, I mean, Noah did it. We should be doing it. That is one of the verses that I've been trying to always keep bringing back up because I feel like it's pretty important. That was all what I found going through that transformation stuff too. But John 14:15, if you love me, you will obey my commands. All right, so verse 6, chapter 7, verse 6, Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, so there's female again, came to Noah. So remember, they came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. So there again, worded just a little bit different. As God had commanded Noah. Noah's doing exactly what he's told. And after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. So Noah got in there, and it wasn't until 7 days later. He had, I guess, basically 7 days maybe to get everything settled in or something. But I don't know why it waited 7 days then from when he entered until it started raining. So Noah had 7 days there, a week.
7-year tribulation.
Seven in creation, it's God's number.
Yeah, and so 7 every time in the Bible scripture means that it leads to the tribulation. That's a very good point. I didn't even get any of that, and that makes sense. And 7's always used for completion too. So like, okay, he's in here. Let's wait 7 days. That part is completed and started. But I like that 7. I'm gonna put that in there. You might want to come back here if you got all that going on.
Comical to listen to. It was when he was Clinton back then.
10, verse 10. Verse 10.
I didn't come up on that long.
Is that the app they had on, the Facebook?
On the Bulls video. Yep, it's very, very, very helpful.
Okay. Where that was verse 10. I pretty much said. Oh, so okay. Back up to verse 9. I know. I've hit this a lot. Noah not only believed what God said, but he also acted on it. He did what he was commanded. Just, we talked about it in our transform. But so that verse, I had it wrote down here, that faith without deeds is dead. That's James 2:26. If you wanted to write that down, I know we talked about it before. But all right, so verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of heavens were opened. So not only did it start raining, but springs from the great deep, so our underwater aquifers, all that kind of stuff, I mean, just bursting up through the crust of the earth. So water is not only finally coming down as rain for the first time in history, but now it's also busting up through the earth's crust. I mean, you can get into some commentaries that talk about there was ice at this time, and when it busted up, the lava warmed things up and let things fall. I mean, you can get into all that stuff. It really doesn't matter, just as long as we know that rain came down, water come up through the earth. And I'd say it's probably pretty violent. If Noah writes in there, burst forth. I'd say this is part of what changes our topography. Earthquakes, all that, volcanic eruptions, when this is all going on. Picture, in the middle of our ocean right now, all of a sudden opens up, it comes out in the middle of the ocean, the tidal waves tsunamis, tidal waves that it sends everywhere. It's going to be pretty violent. Let's see, do I have anything else on that? And okay, so this comes quite a bit. So if you remember in creation, God was able to tell the water where to go and separated the water here and there. Several different times God is moving the water just like he's doing here. And then eventually, when he wants it all to dry up, God is able to tell the water where to go. And I'm sure when this is all going on, the topography, which Noah's locked in, so he can't, see everything around him. But the topography of the earth, it's got to change tremendously. That's why they say pre-flood and post-flood earth or continents and all that stuff, it's all different after this flood. And only you think, I know this is getting a little ahead, but when it's all coming out, but then when it all goes back away, in a relatively short amount of time, for that much water, it's going to be moving a lot of earth along with it then too. So, all right. So verse 12, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Verse 13, on that very day Noah and his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. So this verse right here, verse 13. On that very day, Noah and his sons, all the wives, entered the ark. Right before this, we are seeing the judgment and wrath, the destruction of God, and also the grace and mercy of God all at the same time. We're seeing the destruction with the rain, the water coming from up underneath the ground, the destruction that's getting ready to all happen and take place. But then God's also saving Noah and the animals that are on the ark all at the same time. So we got both things going on. Just like when you get in towards the end of times, there's going to be judgment and wrath in the tribulation. But there's also going to be grace and mercy because, I mean, God's waiting for that magic number to hit people to turn to him before what he avenges the saints and all that. So that's one of the verses there in scripture that you can see both going on at the same time, wrath and grace, mercy all happening together. All right, so verse 14, they had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings, pairs of all creatures that have a breath of life in them, came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. So I'm going to assume that if the Lord's shutting something, I bet that's not coming open. I bet that door is not going to come open for nothing. I bet it's
that door won't be used.
yeah, and I bet it's held together a little better than like JB Weld we got going on today.
How do I mean, pitch is what they sealed it with.
Yeah.
But
All
at the same time, gopher wood must have been some kind of a pliable wood where they could bend it a certain amount. Because if you look at the ark, it's not straight squared. It's bowed out, and you know, I always wondered what kind of wood today would relate to gopher.
Yeah, so a lot of the commentaries say cypress, and I think pine was maybe in there a little bit. I don't remember if I had it. A lot of people, like some actually just, some translations actually just call it cypress wood.
The book I was trying to find, I can't find it. I was gonna bring it to you.
Does it say what it is?
Yeah, but I don't know where I done with the book. Somebody borrowed it.
Yes. So that's in verse 14 of chapter 6, and actually, so my NIV just calls it cypress wood.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And everybody says we don't really know exactly what it could be, but it's some kind of cedar, cypress, and that stuff. A lot of those woods, when you do so, I remember like one church camp thing we went to a long time ago. We had like, I don't know, made some kind of basket thing, and you actually soak the wood in it to make it pliable to bend around. So I mean, it's definitely about use the wet wood and then it hold together when it's done. And that's like pitch too. You know, when we read they smeared pitch on everything, we don't really know exactly what that is, but basically some kind of tar to cover up the seams and whatnot.
It's what the sap, it's called out of cedar, isn't it?
What's
They
that?
call, like cedar sap pitch, don't they call it that?
Resin.
Resin, yeah, that's it, you're
At
right.
the time.
Yeah.
And they may use that to boil into pitch.
Yeah.
It could be very possible because it's sticky. Very possible. See, we got our tree expert here too. What kind of wood is this? You know?
Cheap wood.
Press wood.
The cypress trees around here that I've seen, they're either by water or they're in lakes or ponds or something.
Yeah.
So they gotta be by water. So
Yeah.
it's tough wood.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of those things that, I mean, just nobody knows because, I mean, we haven't ever found the ark or anything like that. And I like that, you know, I like how a lot of the commentaries I read, they literally say, like, nobody knows, this is just what we're thinking. You know what I mean? They, like, I learned a while back that when you speculate, if you want to speculate about the Bible, it's fine as long as you tell people I'm just speculating. You know what I mean? Don't act like it's the gospel truth when you technically do not know. All right, so verse 17. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. So the way I take that, got the highest mountain, picture the highest mountain, and then 20 feet of water above that. So I don't know, what the highest mountain, because we don't know what the topography looked like before the floods. We don't know what the tallest mountain is. I mean, there is speculations in some of the commentary. I didn't even write them down because it doesn't matter. Just picture a really tall mountain with 20 feet of water above it. So that's how. Yeah, I'd say at least. Yeah. Yeah. And then one neat thing to point out too. So there are over 270 flood stories in all the different cultures of the world, okay, all over the earth, which owe their origin to this one global event that took place. So cultures that probably don't even know anything about Scripture, if you follow their tales back, it all leads back to one global event. So 270 different flood stories in different cultures all over the world relate back to roughly the same amount or the same point in time. So I thought that was from MacArthur. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And I mean, that, just think, when Noah got off the boat and the population then finally starting to spread, I mean, shoot, all of us relate back to that. So, everybody got across the earth. Well, hey, my great grandpa, he was the one that was driving the boat and stuff and saved, and then it just spread, and then so it winds up, then, of course, people fall away from God, cultures do. So you get 270 different cultures talking about one specific flood that happened at about the same time in history. This is before, obviously paper and all that. They didn't write everything down, so it just had to be told mouth to mouth. All right, verse 21. Okay, it says, every living thing that moved on the earth perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals. It says all the creatures that swarm over the earth and all mankind. Verse 22, everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. 23, every living thing on the face of earth that was wiped out, men and animals, and the creatures that move along the ground, and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. And only Noah was left, and those with him on the ark. So there's a lot of starting in verse 21, you got all mankind, all the creatures, everything. And in verse 23, so there's a lot, pretty much everything's gone, except Noah.
Stinky mess.
Do what?
Stinky.
Oh yeah.
That's why they had that big air vent around the ark, because you can imagine how that would.
Oh, inside the boat? Yeah, the skylight. But there in verse 23, so here's another really good spot to put your name in there. So everything is destroyed on earth, okay? And it says at the end of verse 23, only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. So could you lead your family onto the ark? This is not going to happen today, but just picture that it could. Would God look down on you and be like, yes, you and your family, you're worthy enough to get here on the ark? Noah took his headship, his spiritual role, his leader of the household role. He took it and ran with it. What did it say earlier? He did all God had commanded. He didn't do part of it. He didn't say, hey, I believe you, God, but I don't really want to. You know what I mean? Like, I love you some, but I don't know if I really want to give up that much time, to do studies and whatnot. I mean, it's
That's where the blood of Jesus comes in now. You know, he makes you worthy.
right. Yeah, I mean,
Before that, you didn't have Jesus.
right, but but Noah didn't just believe in God. He acted on it. Yeah, he followed. He had the faith of action. Especially amongst all the chaos and sin in the world then and today, and just like we read in Peter and into the future, because Peter tells us at the end of times it'll be just like the days of Noah. Well, Matthew said it too. Well, can God look down and say, yes, he did that, he did what I commanded, he did what I commanded, you know what I mean? That's when we need to put our names in Noah's place and be like, well, God looked down and be like, yes, he did exactly what I commanded, he followed me, he didn't just say he believed with me, but he actually acted on it and proved that he believed in me. And he led not only himself, but his family, his friends, communities, whatever. He made a difference, for the kingdom. That when you get into that that hits pretty hard. Because, I mean, I didn't really do anything with my so-called faith before. I mean, just sat there and did nothing. And that's why I know before I was not, thought I was a believer, but I was not truly a believer because I wasn't acting on it. It says works don't save us, but works also prove our faith. It said, what was that in James? Faith without works, faith without deeds is dead. And it's just, I feel like it's just so important nowadays because, I mean, it just goes exactly back to Noah. I mean, he acted on it. He didn't just sit there on the sidelines and say, I'd rather go, watch the football game than really, go work on that ark. I'd rather just sit here and, watch the kids go play a baseball game or something like that, instead of, doing what you tell me to, God. The rain could have started any time, but he didn't. He did what God had commanded him.
He was the only true believers back then.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't know how big the population of the earth was at that time, but I mean, it was probably getting up there. It's probably not in the billions like what we have nowadays, but I'd say it was getting up there.
Well, that should show you how hard and difficult. I mean, just because of what you're saying, listen to that.
Yeah.
Noah was the only one.
Only one.
Only one.
Yeah.
So how many put whatever number you want on it?
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah. One made it, and then which then led to his family. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So 8 in all out of whatever number you want to put there. So it's not easy.
No. And I mean, it makes me want to be like, I want to get my family to that finish line and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that, through Jesus, we are okay, and that they don't just say they believe in Jesus, but they actually, believe it in their heart, not just with their words, but believe it in their heart. And that goes back to the Romans 10:9-10, confess with your mouth, but believe in your heart, because it's with your heart you are justified. So you can talk all you want, but if you're not believing it in your heart, and what is Jesus said earlier, if you love me, you obey my command. So it's hard to say you love Jesus, you love God, if you're not doing what he says. I mean, because it says right there, if you love me, you will obey my command. So it's pretty tough to say, oh, I love you, but I like the bars on Saturday night too. I mean, I just try to come up with just stuff, because, people that, I mean, they just do it. They don't want to give up their sin for Jesus.
It seems to me like it would be, this time of history would be harder because you have so many more distractions from the good life of God. You have all kinds of things now.
And
they had some back then, sure.
Right.
It was all personal.
If we might get into that when we get into like Sodom and Gomorrah, because I believe that's in Genesis. Okay, so, but there's actually, later on in Scripture, there's actually a time, or verses that say, if you think the punishment was bad on Sodom and Gomorrah, it's going to be nothing like it is going to be for people like us, because we have this to go by. We have the good news, we have the gospel, we have Jesus, and we still don't listen to it. So our punishment will be more than them. That's why, people think hell, it will be hell, but there's going to be also different tiers of hell, because it says it in here. It says that you think Sodom and Gomorrah is bad, just wait to see what happens to you. So maybe that'll come up when we get into that. If not, Russell, you hear when we get into Revelation, because that is true, because we have the proof, but some of them people back, and don't get me wrong, God will be a just God. You take some South African place maybe that has no knowing of this whatsoever. I'm sure God will judge everybody accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us that know this, our punishment will be way worse if we know it and then turn away from it and not turn to it. Well, maybe I'll have to find that. Like
You can
Sodom
get
and
into all
Gomorrah
that
thing.
about the evangelists and stuff that know the Bible backwards and forward, and then they still sin.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So how much worse
Sure.
is that gonna be on them than
Well,
it
they're
is
still in
on
the
us?
flesh, so they still struggle like everybody else.
Oh yeah. And none of us are going to be perfect.
No.
Even when we come into faith, we're still going to stumble, but it's the stumble and not the deliberate and perpetual stuff that you're doing over and over, knowing that you shouldn't be doing it. That's the kind of stuff we got to get away from. But yes, we're all going to stumble for sure. But that's what's always tricky to explain when you're saying, like, people say, well, you say you're going to sin, but then that we shouldn't sin. Well, then trying to explain, like, yes, we all will sin, but after saving faith, it shouldn't be constant, it shouldn't be deliberate, it shouldn't be perpetual, something that we're doing over and over, knowing that it's wrong and still doing it. Because after coming to faith, you should know it's wrong, and you should be going, instead of going this way, doing it over and over, going back, away from it. Well, that's pretty good. I just made that up. I thought that was pretty good. My kind of language there.
You have to listen to yourself again?
Huh?
You have to listen?
No, God, I never listen to these things. Quite frankly, I think I sound like an idiot on there. All right, so verse 24. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. So took Noah 120 years to build the ark, and then the water flooded the earth for 150 days. And I tried to make a copy. MacArthur and David Jeremiah, they both have a little like graph thing that shows, like, kind of breaks it out. When you get into the 20th day of the 7th month of the 37,000th year, whatever, I don't know how it all works, but like it gets confusing. How long was everything? But you could. That's one thing you could probably Google pretty safe. Is like a timeline of how the flood went. Noah got on, 7 days later it started raining for 40 days, and then different things. And then when we get into how he timed getting off the ark, when he released the raven and a dove, if you wanted to look up exactly how many years or days it was when he did this and that, you could go find a little graph. I tried to copy it, and it come out all like black where you couldn't even read it, and I was like, I just gave up.
That's the kind of stuff that's beside the point.
Right.
But,
It's neat to
makes it
know.
interesting, because your mind can start thinking about.
Yeah.
I think about 40 days of raining, and the waters are coming up, everything. And you're on the ark, and they're probably watching people and animals all drowned all around them, and some of them scrambling for their lives and all that stuff. So that's not just it's not exactly a quick death.
Right.
For a lot of
8
people.
hours of rain out there in Donovan.
Yeah.
Living out there, just 8 or 9 hours out there in
Yeah.
Donovan. It was one day.
So imagine that
8 or
destruction.
9 hours, 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just with rain. Imagine water coming up from the bottom and
that,
from the
what's
top.
coming up, you're
Yeah.
gonna have
Yeah.
a lot of water.
All right, we'll go a little bit farther here in 8, till time, I guess, runs out. So in chapter 7, the flood, the destruction peaked, okay, in chapter 7. But now here in chapter 8, it's going to start going on its way out. And just kind of keep in mind, especially here in verse 1, God is always in the middle of everything, even during the destruction and calamity. God's right here in the middle of it. So verse 1, but, see, here we go, we got another but. In Genesis, it seems like when there's a but, it's actually a good thing. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Okay, so the beginning of it, God remembered. God didn't forget about Noah. He didn't say, "Oh man, what was it? 100 and how many days? 150 days. Shoot, I forgot about that dude I put on that boat." It wasn't like that. It's not going to be like that. This is just
I'll be getting right by now.
right. Yeah. Man, I hope he told him to put an air hole or something so he can breathe. So don't think that. I mean, he kind of you get a you know what he means. It's just that he didn't forget about Noah. The wild animals and livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind. So at the last part of verse 1 there, and it says, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So God made the waters come, and also God's making the wind come to start drying this stuff out. Verse 2 and 3, now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down. Okay, so God shut off the geysers, I like to call them, what's bursting up from the ground. He shut them off, the rain shut off, and God's starting to tell the water where to go back to. And just like we learned in creation, and then when he started this, God can tell the water to do whatever he wants. And so I think this is pretty fascinating. So some of it, he just says receded, okay? Not all of it. With the wind, yes, obviously some of it is going to evaporate. But some people still say the water that happened that day, and then it started receding, it's still some of the same water that we have to this day. They put it back. God put it back in the oceans. You got to think if these geysers are going up, the topography is all different. We don't. There was no, I guess, really super maybe deep oceans at that time. God made them deeper. Just sent the water out. Hey, you stay here. America popped up over here while Israel's coming up over here back out of the ground. You know what I mean? So that's a pretty fascinating thing. You go jump in the ocean or something right there, it'd be like, you know what I mean? This could be the exact same water that was here during the flood, because it doesn't say it disappeared, all of it. And yeah, some of it's going to evaporate, but some it just says receded. So God put it back where He wanted it to.
Deep wells also.
Yeah, and then so think when them geysers, imagine a lot of it. I think He sent it back underground and refilled all of our aquifers and stuff that we have to this day, where we get go get our tap water and whatever else from. And then now water never, I guess, I'm not a huge scientist person, but like our water really don't disappear, right? Evaporation, condensation, come back down as rain, right? It's just a cycle.
Yeah, there's a dynamic process involved in life.
Yeah.
Water's continually coming and going. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
never completely disappears, just gets recycled, And so that's why, I mean, I can totally buy into that the water that we have to this day is still the water from the flood, which is super cool to kind of think of. I never thought of it. And one thing I want to point out, and it just popped into my head, but we see God control all this water. Well, do you know how much of our body is made up of water?
97%.
Yeah, I knew it's in the 90s, so that's a lot. That's a lot. I just kind of threw that in there. It just popped into my head like. Yeah. Oh shoot, that's good. Let's see.
Actually made you learn some stuff.
Sometimes I hear it sloshing when I walk.
That ain't no kidding.
Get some back here a little bit.
Yeah. And then let it go down the drain and get recycled. So what we have today, our Earth's surface is different than it was before the flood. Our oceans are different than it was. Our rivers, our salt water, our fresh water, it's all different. Like I said, some of the water probably evaporated, which then is going to come back down as rain later on. And then also, like Daniel said, redo the aquifers. The water went back into the great deep, into them holes that were opened up, make our aquifers or wells and whatever we got going on. now. So, all right. So first, did I read 3? Yeah. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down. In verse 4, on the 17th day of the 17th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And you can look it up. Some people say they think they know where this mountain is. Still never found the ark.
Especially in Turkey.
Turkey.
Yeah. So you can get into that if you want to a little bit. One thing I do want to point out is super really cool. On verse 4, when it says the ark came to rest, if you remember when we did come up with Noah's name means to rest. So God already knew when he was born that he was going to be the one to make this ark come to a rest. It's just kind of fascinating how the ark came to a rest, and Noah's name means rest. Verse 5, the waters continued to recede until the 10th month. On the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So that's where it gets a little, like, 10th month this, 17th day of this month. That's when you go get you a little Google thing of kind of the days and that if you want. I like some of that stuff just to have. Like, I got a little thing here. I wish I would have found a lot earlier. I like to just keep some of that stuff in a notebook and be like, if anybody ever asks you questions, and you kind of got like a little cheat sheet you can kind of go to right away. So
On the wings of the snow white dove.
yeah. Furlan Husky, right?
Yeah.
On the
I do
wings.
that one once in a while.
Yeah. Let's see. What time is it? Do we want to keep I've been recording an hour.
It's 2020.
Oh yeah, we better stop then.
Yeah, we'll be